This is the Medici family, one of the wealthiest and most powerful dynasties in history. Their influence shaped the Renaissance, funded kings, and controlled the flow of money all across Europe. But their true genius wasn't just in art or politics. It was in a system that quietly rewrote the rules of wealth: double-entry bookkeeping.
Double-entry bookkeeping. Not thrilling, but without it, the Medici, they'd be broke faster than you can say ciao.
At first glance, it might seem like a dull invention, but this system is as powerful as it is invisible. It allowed the Medici family to rise from merchants to rulers, quietly amassing fortunes and shaping empires. But here's the surprising part. This ancient system is still used by every major business today.
That's right. Without it, companies like Amazon and Apple, poof, gone.
Double-entry bookkeeping is the backbone of modern finance. But where did it come from? And how did it spread? And why did it matter so much to a family like the Medici? Stick around, because by the end of the video, you'll not only understand the secret behind this ancient method, but also how it continues to shape the global economy in ways you'd never expect. Today, we'll dive deep into this 15th century discovery that changed the world of business forever, and that still powers it to this day. Before we dive into double-entry bookkeeping, let's take a step back in time to understand how chaotic the world of finance was in the Middle Ages. In medieval Europe, merchants and bankers kept what is known as single-entry records. They'd write down how much money came in and how much money went out. Sounds pretty simple, right? Nope. Without a system to keep track of both sides of every transaction, so what was spent and what was earned, business owners were often left guessing whether they were actually making money. It was like trying to sail a ship with no compass. Merchants would misplace coins, loans would go unrecorded, and entire businesses would crumble under the weight of confusion. One mistake in a ledger could mean the difference between prosperity and bankruptcy. And trust me, mistakes were made. A lot of mistakes. For businesses, this was the equivalent of trying to run a marathon with your shoelaces tied together. It wasn't just inefficient, it was downright dangerous. But that's where double-entry bookkeeping comes in. But before we get to that, let me introduce you to the family who mastered the system, the Medici, or the Medici.
The Medici. They made history with more gold than pizza has mozzarella. But they also had something bigger: strategy.
The Medici family is one of the most influential dynasties in history. They rose from humble beginnings as wool traders in Florence to become the financial powerhouse of Europe. Their wealth didn't just fund beautiful art and architecture, it fueled politics, religions, and even wars. At the heart of their success was their banking empire, which stretched across Europe from Rome to London. But how did they manage such a vast network of wealth? How did they keep track of loans, debts, and profits spread across so many different cities and countries? The answer, of course, lies in their adoption of double-entry bookkeeping. This method allowed them to record both sides of every transaction, debits and credits, in a way that balanced the books perfectly. For the Medici, it wasn't just about making money, it was about knowing how much money they had at any given time and where it was going. Double-entry bookkeeping gave the Medici the edge they needed, tracking every coin, every debt, and every profit with precision. It wasn't just about balancing books, though. It was about controlling the flow of power and money across Europe, turning them from mere bankers into the architects of financial dominance. Now, let's talk about the man who took double-entry bookkeeping from a simple idea to a formalized system that would stand the test of time. And no, that wasn't the Medici family. It was a man with the name of Luca Pacioli. Luca Pacioli was born in 1447 in the Tuscan town of San Sepolcro, and he had a mind that could rival the greats of his time. In fact, he was close friends with Leonardo da Vinci, the ultimate Renaissance man. But while da Vinci sketched helicopters and dissected human bodies, Pacioli was revolutionizing the world of finance.
Leonardo, genius, magnificent. But Luca's accounting, bellissimo. It's very, very sexy.
In 1494, Pacioli published his most famous work. Let's see if I can get this right. Summa di aritmetica, geometria, proporzioni e proporzionalità. Okay, cool. Within this massive text, he included a treatise on double-entry bookkeeping, which he referred to as the Method of Venice. Pacioli himself didn't invent double-entry bookkeeping. Merchants had been using similar methods for years, but he was the first to explain it in a way that everyone could understand. He laid out the principles of the system, and showed how to record transactions, and most importantly, he introduced the concept of balance. Pacioli's work was so influential that it became the standard for merchants and bankers across Europe. His treatise on double-entry bookkeeping was printed and distributed far and wide, making him the father of modern accounting. As strange as that sounds.
Luca Pacioli, the man who made numbers dance. Without him, your business would be a lost, like a pizza with no toppings. Tutto sbagliato.
Now, let's break down the genius of double-entry bookkeeping. Like I said, it's all about balance. Simple, yet powerful enough to keep entire economies running smoothly. At its core, double-entry bookkeeping records every transaction in two places. Once as a debit, and once as a credit. When money is spent, it's recorded as a debit. When goods or services are received, it's recorded as a credit. Every transaction has two sides, ensuring everything is tracked. For example, you buy $100 worth of coffee filters for your business. That $100 goes in as a debit, the money spent. On the other side, it's listed as a credit, which is the value of the coffee filters you received. Both sides balance, keeping your financial records clear. If something doesn't match up, it's then easy to catch and correct. And that's the brilliance here. Everything is accounted for. Next, let's introduce the concept of assets and liabilities. Assets are what you own, like the coffee filters you bought. Liabilities, on the other hand, are what you owe, like a loan or an unpaid invoice. For more coffee filters, presumably. For the first time, businesses could see the full picture. Not just how much cash they had, but what they owned versus what they owed. This system allowed businesses to plan ahead, borrow money, and expand with confidence.
See, assets and liabilities, like a cheese and a sauce. One without the other, complete disaster.
This balance between assets and liabilities gave businesses a complete snapshot of their financial health. This wasn't just revolutionary for the Medici, it became the backbone of every major business from then on. Let's go back to the Medici for a moment. Their banking empire wasn't just about loans and interest rates. It was about control. Control of money, control of power, and control of influence. Double-entry bookkeeping gave them the tools they needed to keep track of every single transaction across their vast networks of clients. From small merchants to powerful kings, they could see at a glance who owed them money, who they owed, and how much profit they were making. This level of control allowed the Medici to dominate European banking for nearly 2 centuries. They weren't just the bankers to the rich and the powerful, they were the puppet masters behind the scenes, pulling the strings of politics and power with their financial might. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. The Medici family faced plenty of challenges, from rival bankers to political unrest. But through it all, they remained on top, thanks in no small part to their mastery of double-entry bookkeeping. By the time the Renaissance was in full swing, the Medici had become the wealthiest family in Europe. Their financial success allowed them to fund some of the greatest artistic achievements of the era, including works of Michelangelo, Botticelli, and Leonardo da Vinci.
You see, at the Medici, they had the smarts, but without double-entry bookkeeping, they'd be as lost as a gondolier without his boat.
The beauty of double-entry bookkeeping isn't just in its simplicity, it's in its longevity. 500 years after Luca Pacioli wrote his treatise, the system is still in use today. In fact, it's the foundation of modern accounting. Every business, from small shops to multinational corporations, rely on the principles of double-entry bookkeeping to keep their finances in order. It's the reason why companies can grow, expand, and thrive in today's complex economy. But the legacy of double-entry bookkeeping isn't just about numbers on a ledger. It's about the way it transformed the world of business. It gave merchants and bankers the tools they needed to track their wealth, manage their debts, and plan for the future. It created a new level of transparency and accountability that allowed businesses to grow and economies to flourish. And it all started with a handful of Italian merchants, a mathematician, and a family of bankers who knew that money wasn't just about making it, it was about managing it.
Grazie Luca, grazie Medici. Without you, we'd be lost.
So what does all of this mean for us today? Well, if you've ever used a credit card, taken out a loan, or balanced your personal budget, you've used a system that traces its roots back to double-entry bookkeeping. Today, this system is at the heart of every major financial institution in the world. It's how banks track deposits and loans, how businesses manage their expenses, and how governments balance their budgets, or at least when they're doing it right. Without double-entry bookkeeping, the global economy as we know it wouldn't exist. The ability to track assets, liabilities, and equity is what allows companies to grow, invest, and innovate. It's what makes modern capitalism possible. And it all started with a system created over 500 years ago in Italy. A system so simple, yet so powerful, that it's still with us today.
And so, remember, next time you check your bank account or think about a company's billions, grazie Luca, grazie Medici, and grazie a me for telling you this story.
Double entry bookkeeping may not be the most glamorous invention, but its impact is undeniable. It revolutionized finance, built empires, and is still powering the global economy today. So the next time you think about the Renaissance and the incredible art and architecture it produced, remember that behind it all was a system that kept the money flowing, one entry at a time.
Well, hello there. You might think that now that your accounts are all sorted, you're destined to amass a great fortune. Sadly, it's not quite as simple as inheriting an estate, or should I say a castle. No, my dear friend, the real challenge lies in navigating the grand debates of our time. Capitalism versus socialism. If you're ready to dive into the intricacies of these two economic titans, then do click on the next video. It's rather like choosing between high tea and a lavish banquet, though admittedly with far greater consequences.